What's up guys, Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking summertime topwater fishing. I have some tips and some tricks to help you catch more fish all the way through summer. Summertime bass fishing, more importantly, summertime topwater fishing can be so much fun. Whether you're throwing a frog in the thickest, nastiest grass, or you're out offshore throwing a big topwater wake bait or walking bait, summertime, aggressive fish, post-spawn fish, these fish need to eat, and those explosions, those topwater explosions, are what bass fishing is all about. Now, summertime, we're talking about the right conditions, right? But for the most part, topwater fishing is my go-to start of any day when I'm bass fishing. Whether I'm getting out early, first light, or I'm getting out in the evening, I'm typically picking up a topwater. So after today's video, hopefully you have a ton of confidence in the different types of topwater baits, and more importantly, some knowledge and some tips and tricks on how to successfully catch more fish on topwater. Because again, I remember my first topwater bites as a little kid fishing ponds. I was throwing a hula popper, I was throwing a jitterbug, and I was catching 3 to 5 pound bass. And that is literally what got me hooked on bass fishing. So having your first explosion, your first topwater explosion, can quite literally be life-changing. So like I said, summertime bass fishing, let's talk topwaters. Now, I have a few easy, simple tricks that will kind of wrap up at the end of the video just to help with your topwater fishing. But let's talk about topwater fishing. For the most part, if you read the book on bass fishing, it says target low light conditions and target shade areas, darker areas, low light areas, and that is key. Again, summertime, you're going to have higher water temps, right? So you want to fish where these fish can get into cooler areas, cooler water temps, and cooler areas to ambush from. So starting out in the morning, right? It's cooled down all night, evening time, starts that bite. Maybe they, fed all night, but early in the morning, you have the lowest water temps you'll have of the entire day. And that's when I start throwing a topwater, okay? Whether it's a walking bait, a popping bait, a straight retrieve Whopper Plopper style bait. We're gonna talk about the different styles here in just a minute. But whether it's any of those styles, I'm typically starting in those conditions, those low light, early conditions. Now, of course, there's always an exception to the rule, right? I've talked about it in previous videos, how some of my best topwater days in the summer, during the summer, were during the hottest part of the day. High sun, we're talking noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, high sun. But again, I'm fishing those key areas. I'm chasing the shade lines. I'm chasing that shade, the deepest, darkest grass mats, when I'm throwing my frog. Again, we're looking for cooler water. We're looking for areas where these fish can ambush from. Now, another exception to the rule, overcast, right? Today we got highs in the high 80s, low 90s. We got storms rolling in this evening, but now we have overcast. Now, these fish pull out of the shade. So now, in these conditions, now I'm going with a faster moving bait, a bait that I can cover more water with, because these fish are gonna be roaming. They're not gonna be in that isolated shade line. They're not gonna be on that isolated grass mat. They're gonna be out roaming, eating bluegill and shad and all of your bedfish, all of your bait fish. Again, the bluegill are on beds, they're coming off their beds. The shad spawn has already happened. These fish are moving around chasing those bait fish, and with the overcast conditions, chucking and winding. So low light, typically chase those low light conditions, and then chase those cooler water temps for more active fish. Now with that said, wind, right? If it is windy or it is calm, I'm typically throwing 2 different styles of topwater. So we're gonna talk about that too. Blow up over there. There's always blow ups whenever I'm shooting videos. So water temps, sun, shade, overcast, wind. So I'm always chasing that shade, right? I'm always chasing that stuff until there isn't any. And then structure, right? Say there's a laydown, or say there's a brush pile or a tree that fell in the water. These fish are gonna pull into that stuff so they can ambush out of it. So throwing a topwater over a laydown, throwing a topwater around dock pilings or over brush piles, over submerged grass is the key areas that I'm targeting. I'm looking for those conditions, and then I'm looking for those targets to target, okay? And then last but not least, match the hatch, right? If I'm fishing a fishery that has big gizzard shad and they're eating gizzard shad, I'm throwing a bigger bait. If I'm fishing a fishery that has bluegill up popping, I'm throwing a smaller bluegill bait. If I'm fishing a fishery that has threadfin shad and they're chasing threadfin shad, I'm either throwing a popper or a smaller walking bait. We're gonna talk about all of these in just a minute, but match the hatch. And then last but not least, again, vary your retrieve. Whether it's a walking bait and it's pause, or pause, you know, changing your cadence, getting more erratic, or slowing down with a popper. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Always change your cadence depending on the day, depending on the time of day, how the fish are acting. Make sure you vary your retrieve, change your cadence, and you will find, let those fish tell you the cadence for that day that they want. It could be quicker moving, it could be barely moving at all, or somewhere in between, but vary your retrieve, play around with your cadence, and let those fish tell you how they want that topwater presented on that given day. All right, now let's talk about my favorite baits, favorite styles of baits. And they're chasing shad right here again. I'm not sure they're bass. They might be like whites or yellows or something, but gotta make a cast, right? Again, overcast conditions, these fish come out and they are out roaming. They could be on this entire flat. So you never know exactly where they're gonna be at in the overcast conditions. Now, exception to every rule, right? If there is a hard piece of structure on that flat, with the overcast conditions, they might be butted up against that to ambush from. So if you know where there's a stump or a laydown or some man-made structure, fish that and then work out from there. But typically with these types of conditions, I'm going with a bait that I can cover a ton of water on. Again, fishing some of this stuff, I'm fishing basically as quickly, as effectively, as efficiently that I can. I'm moving water. I'm trying to find where these fish school up at. Again, summertime bass fishing, whether you're topwater fishing, you're shallow fishing, or you're offshore fishing, these fish school up. You're gonna find big schools of fish. So how I approach that depends on the day, depends on the conditions, but I'm typically covering water, okay? So if I'm fishing a big backwater, like say this big backwater here on Chickamauga, I'm picking up a bait where I can just cover water, chuck and wind until I get to an area where I feel like I need to pick it apart or slow down, and that's where I will pick up a popper or a walking bait or something I can move that's not covering a lot of distance towards me, but I can move it side to side and get a lot of action and really pick those key areas apart. That's kind of the 1-2 punch. Now, obviously, if there's grass or if there's vegetation, you know, that's when you're going with a frog. But again, those same rules apply. If I'm slowing down, I'm throwing a walking frog or a popping frog. If I'm just covering water over a vast grass mat, I'm gonna be throwing some kind of flapping frog, like this row flapping frog or like a horny toad, something you can just chuck and wind. It's basically a weedless buzzbait or weedless plopper. But again, that kind of falls right in line with how I approach with the traditional treble hook baits as well. All right, I can't remember if I talked about it or not, but you know, topwater fishing can be as easy as going to Walmart or your favorite tackle shop and buying a spook, right? Or it can be as detailed as having all of your different types of topwaters, all of your different sizes, all of your different sounds, different colors. It could be whatever you want. If you had to have one, go get yourself a spook. That's a walking bait that you can chuck and wind. You can throw it on a spinning rod. You can throw it on a bait caster, and just it's a real loud side to side walking bait, and that will get you started into topwater fishing. If you want to kind of go down that more advanced rabbit hole, you know, there's different baits for different conditions. Okay, so say you launch the boat or the kayak or you're shore fishing, pond fishing, and it is slick calm. You're gonna throw a different style of walking topwater or a different sounding topwater than you would if there was chop on the water, right? So if there's chop, there's a little bit of wind. I'm not talking waves. I'm just talking about chop, a little bit of ripples on the water. I'm gonna go with a real loud walking, knocking bait. Okay, whether it's this is the Jowler by Rapala, but it's a real loud walking bait. It's a fairly larger sized walking bait compared to right here. This is the Giant Dog X, right? It's considerably bigger and louder than this guy. Okay, we're gonna talk about that here shortly, but the Jowler is a cool bait because it's got like a cupped face on it. So it spits and has a lot more movement and splash when you're walking it. This is something that I'm gonna throw if I have those conditions, okay? If I have those real subtle, early morning, not a peep on the water, not a ripple on the water, man, it is really hard to beat this guy right here. This is the Giant Dog X by Megabass. A lot smaller, a lot quieter, but this thing really shines in those subtle kind of finessey conditions. Again, real side to side walking bait. If you have a hard time walking baits, I'm gonna get to these in just a second, tips, but you can add a little split ring to the front of your bait, like I did on this Giant Dog X. But side to side action, it lets that bait move freely instead of tying directly to the face or the eye of the bait. See that? Put a size 2 or 3 owner hyperwire split ring, and it just lets that bait move freer than if you're tied right to the bait. But this is a very, very good topwater if you have those subtle conditions. All right, so we talked about if you had to just get one. We talked about if you had kind of those windy, more aggressive conditions. That's where I'm going. I'm going with something that has a lot of sound, right? We talked about that. We talked about a big presence in the water. I don't know that you can get louder than the Whopper Plopper. This thing is so easy to throw. It sounds like a little outboard motor, and it works really well in those conditions. What I will say with the Whopper Plopper, that's the 130 size. What I will say is I often like the 110 size. It's a little bit higher pitched plop, a little bit different sound, but it's a smaller profile bait. So if you're fishing around smallmouth or spotted bass that typically have smaller size or smaller mouths than a big largemouth, I like throwing that 110. If I'm fishing for big, loud, or big bass, bigger bass, I'm going with that 130 size. The largemouth don't have any problem getting that full size Whopper Plopper down, but that 110 is an awesome beginner size. But again, this is an easy bait to throw. It's an easy bait to fish. This is one of my wife and kids' favorite topwater to throw because it's just so easy to chuck and wind. Again, just fishing this over the big grass flats, over the flooded tree, over, you know, the brush piles, anything like that. This thing is super easy. Again, it floats, so if you pause it or you jerk it and then pause it, it's not going to sink like a traditional buzz bait. Okay, let me lead you to this tip right here. 2 tips. You see how that just fouled right there? If you're having problems with your topwater baits fouling on the braid, typically I throw them on straight braid, unless I'm throwing like a walking bait or a popper. If I'm throwing a buzz bait or a Whopper Plopper, or even, yeah, or a frog, I'm throwing straight braid. But if I'm having an issue, because I've added a swivel, okay? I've added a swivel to that Whopper Plopper. Again, sometimes with that tail spinning, you get grass in there, you get debris in there, it kind of fouls up, and then your whole bait starts spinning. That just adds a ton of line twist to your reel and your line, and it just messes everything up. So I actually take a number 2 or number 3 owner hyperwire split ring. Again, I'm kind of jumping the gun here, giving you guys some tips, and I add a swivel, little power swivel, and then I tie to that, and that helps eliminate that line twist, because this thing can just spin freely and doesn't affect your line. But if you're having an issue where your front hook is catching your braid and it's fouling up, add a monofilament leader. Whether it's, you know, this is 50-pound braid or 65-pound braid, I can add like a 20 or a 25-pound mono leader. It doesn't have to be very long, but the mono floats and it will keep that line up on the water away from your treble hooks, and it just helps if you're having issues with your bait fouling on the braid. But again, that Whopper Plopper is an awesome bait that I have tied on almost from now all the way through the fall, depending on the conditions. I'm going with that 110 size or that 130 size, but it's a bait for me that I have rigged all the way till basically the fall transition into the winter. Okay, but now let's talk about frog fishing. Okay, we talked about grass, we talked about these shallow fish looking for lively grass. We talked about bluegill spawning. I haven't found a better frog for me that works great around those spawning bluegill than that jackal gavacho. You guys can see the cheeks, the side. This thing is just beat up. It's a popping frog. It's super weedless. It's got a chartreuse back, so you can visibly see it a long ways away, but it has more of that ghosty bluegill color. Again, that jackal gavacho, that is a staple for me. It's always tied on. Typically, I run 2 frogs. I'll run a popping frog like that guy right there, and then I'll run a walking frog. But specifically around bluegill and around isolated grass patches, around sparse grass where you can walk this thing and have it bloop and pop and everything like a popper, that thing is a must. Okay? Back to the traditional topwaters. We talked about this guy. We talked about you know, more finessey mornings, more finessey evenings, low light conditions, quiet. You can't beat that guy right there. If you need something louder, go with that jowler or go with the shower blows. I like the 105 size. Again, like the Whopper Plopper, it comes in multiple sizes. Comes in a 125, a 77, a 105, even a bigger one. I like that 105. It's just a good size, has good weight, so I can cast it a long ways. It's got a fairly nice knock to it. It's not too overbearing. This is my smallmouth and spot killer. That thing right there, that is a must. Okay, so that's the walking baits. The other topwater I have tied on this time of the year is going to be a popper. I have it narrowed down to 2 poppers. This guy right here, that is the World Pop by Shimano. See that flash boost in there? This is an awesome finessey popper. Another tip for you guys, if you have, let me show you. Most people fish a popper and they just bloop, bloop, but I like to walk it. Just like you're walking your favorite walking style topwater, a popper walks extremely well too. Someone just wiped out over here on a big tube. Gonna have some wake coming here in just a second. But walking a popper can be lights out, okay? If you have trouble walking a popper, try tying the Rapala loop knot. Again, it's a super simple knot. There's videos all over the internet how to tie it. Really easy to tie. But again, like adding that split ring to the face or the line tie of your bait just adds that free moving movability of that bait. So adding that to it. I don't like to put the split ring on the littler baits because sometimes it weighs down the face and it just kind of affects the bloop or the cupped face. So on the little guys, I like tying that little Rapala loop knot. Little tip for you. If you want a larger size popper and you are fishing around, here comes those waves. That guy right there, that's the Megabass Pop Max. A little bit larger profile, has holes in the cheeks to add a bubble trail, but that is ultra realistic. Again, you're around bedding bluegill, you're up around those bluegill eaters. That guy is an awesome bait as well. Sorry about the wakes, guys. All right, last but not least, if you're a guy that likes throwing swim baits, if you're a guy that likes chasing larger than average fish, if you're a guy that has gizzard shad, bigger bait fish in your fishery, now is the time to be throwing a wake bait. This is the Tactical 210. It's our favorite wake bait. We designed this, spent years designing it. It's got some patents on it, but this thing can be lights out when you're fishing. Woo, when you're fishing around bigger bait and night fishing. That's gonna be my last tip for you guys. Night fishing a big topwater, specifically a big wake bait. Now, a wake bait, for those guys that aren't familiar, it is a topwater bait and it just, on the surface, right? It clack, 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 clack. It puts off a big wake, a big V. These fish can track it super easily. Clear water, these fish come up from a long ways to eat it. Typically, I like to throw this around big fish spots, right? Out off of main lake points, out over shell beds, or maybe there's a tree where the fish are in that tree. I'll make a long cast. I don't land on the area that I want to fish. I make sure I throw a long ways past it. Then I bring this big bait up to it, okay? You can get away with these smaller baits landing on it, but when you have a bait that is larger, it just makes a giant splash. I typically like getting past the area that I want to fish and I bring it across. But again, a wake bait is so much fun, especially in the summertime. So throwing this tactical wake, you can walk it, you can chop it, you can burn it a little bit subsurface, but this time of the year, especially in low light conditions, just creeping it. This thing is click, 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 click. Big old wake, looks super realistic. If you guys haven't played around with wake baits, that thing is awesome. Again, we designed this bait, took us a couple years, really fine tuning this bait, because there's a lot of good wake baits on the market, but they specialize in specific things, whether it's a chopping bait or a walking bait or something you could burn, some that you can't because they'll blow out. We wanted a bait that you could do everything with, whether you're walking it, whether you're burning it, whether you're slow reeling it. We wanted the right sound. We went with a different bill to help deflect and push the bait up and over branches, that sort of stuff. But if you guys haven't tried a wake bait, now is the time to try a wake bait. With that said, if you are up to it, I highly recommend throwing these guys at night. Go to your favorite community hole, go to your favorite spot, your favorite dock, whatever it may be. You got a moon up, maybe it's a full moon or it's somewhat bright out. Just like fish use shade lines during the day, they use shade lines at night, and throwing a bigger profile, slower moving topwater can be so much fun. Guys, I can't tell you how many times I've had giant explosions, big old bass at night on a big topwater. You really want to challenge yourself. Go when it's a new moon and there's no moon out and you can't see diddly squat, but you know the area you're fishing. You're hoping when you make the cast that you hear a splash and not a clank or a crack, and then you're just walking that bait, and then you hear that explosion. You don't know if you have a 6-incher or a 10-pounder. It is heart pounding, okay? But a little bit on a tangent, big bait fishing, big topwater fishing in the summertime can be so much fun. The other place this really works, talked about it a little bit, out on your reservoirs, main lake points, fishing over deep water. These fish don't move up and down a lot. They move in and out, kind of like this boat moving in from all these waves. These fish move up shallow in the morning. Maybe they're feeding on bluegill and stuff in the morning, and then they back out on that main lake point, and maybe they're suspended 8 or 10 feet down, 15 feet down over 100 feet of water. Throwing a topwater out there, you'll have a lot more drawing power with a big bait than you will a little bait, but definitely don't not fish that stuff, because I've had some amazing days on highland reservoirs fishing way out off of main lake points over 100 feet of water, 150 feet of water, throwing a topwater, because these fish, like I said, are only down 15 feet or so. They come up and eat, but the bigger bait, throwing that out there, walking that thing off that main lake point, having a 5 or 6 pound spotted bass or smallmouth, largemouth come up and eat it. It's just so much fun. All right, now that we've talked about, I will link these combos down below in the video description too, because they're very specific. Real quickly, frog rod 7.3 extra heavy X Pride. That is an ideal frog rod. We've tried all of them. This thing is pretty pricey. This is the Destroyer. This is the Z Crank. Isel, however you want to pronounce it, but it works extremely well for smaller topwater. It has more of that moderate action. Again, it's a crankbait rod, but it has enough tip where it's easy to walk the bait. That is my go-to shower blows rod and Giant Dog X rod. Popper rod, you can get away with anything that's fairly short. This is actually the Loomis 802 topwater rod. It's got actually a picture of a popper on it. Most of these I have braid to a leader if I need a leader, otherwise straight braid, but typically a higher gear ratio reel, either a 7 or 8-to-1 gear ratio reel. As far as the Whopper Plopper, again, that's the Daiwa Zillion, 50-pound braid, 65-pound braid, straight braid to the Whopper Plopper. For these techniques, I like the St. Croix rod. This is actually a 7.3 heavy. St. Croix traditionally or typically is more of a slower action. So just like a crankbait rod, it loads deeper into the blank and helps with keeping those fish pinned when they come up and jump on those smaller treble hooks. And then for the big guy, that's the Loomis, that's the 966 swim bait rod. You guys know how much we love that rod. Again, paired up with a reel with braid and a big leader. But couple more tips for you guys. Make sure, obvious tip, make sure you're checking the hooks on your bait. Make sure you're upgrading the hooks and split rings on your bait. You don't want to, you can speak from experience, you don't want to have the biggest smallmouth of your life come up and eat your top water and then bend all the hooks out, and you watch an 8-pound smallmouth swim away and you're like, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? Make sure you change out your hooks. The other thing, treble hooks. Whether it's from Owner, they make the tournament trailer hook to add feathered trebles to the rear of your hook if they don't come with it. And then Savage Gear, actually, these come up to size 2. The Savage Gear feathered hooks come up to size 2/0. So if you are throwing larger topwaters, upgrade your hooks to the feathered treble in the rear. Already talked about it a little bit, but adding a split ring and some swivels to your baits that have some spin to them will eliminate most of 95% of your line twist. Guys, I apologize for the ocean conditions over here, but it'll eliminate a ton of your line twist, and that will help eliminate just aggravation and just frustration throughout the day. One other tip I want to give you guys: see how these waves are creating a mud line, right? Right now the mud line is going to be 2 or 3 feet. Not only is it creating a mud line, it's also adding chop to for the most part, the slick, calm conditions we've had. Don't be afraid to get up shallow and throw a Whopper Plopper or a walking bait along that mud line. With that man-made water movement, those fish will get up shallow and chomp bait. So again, keep an open mind. You find those conditions, fish those conditions, because you will find fish up there on that wall now that there's waves and a mud line. Okay, also talked about adding that mono leader. I know I kind of did it out of order, but adding a little bit of a mono leader to your walking baits, to your popping baits, and to your wake baits will help in that foul hooking, that front hook coming up and hooking that line and fouling. It can be a pain in the butt when you make a bomber cast over and past that tree that you want to fish. You snuck up to it quietly, you cut off the big motor a long ways away, you drop your trolling motor quietly, you cruised up, you make a bomber cast, and then you start bringing that bait back and it's just all fouled because it hooked that front line. And now you just took that first cast chance over that awesome area and you blew it. So adding a little bit of heavier monofilament line leader will help with keeping that line up and out of the way of the front hook. But guys, summer topwater fishing can be some of the most exciting fishing of the entire year. Again, if you're fishing grass or you're fishing out off of a main lake point in a highland reservoir, these baits will catch fish for you, and hopefully those tips will give you a little bit of confidence and help you successfully catch more fish this summer season. Guys, as always, we appreciate the support. I will link all these products down below in the video description as far as colors and hook upgrades and gear, rods, all that sort of stuff. That way you don't have to keep track. But guys, hopefully you learned something from this video. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.